another program of Centrally Speaking.
Centrally Speaking is a program that opens up the conversation around important matters of economics and finance, matters of national importance that have an impact on your life. I'm Sheena.
And I'm Anna. And we're sending a special shout out to those fans of the show who watch every week. And welcome to those of you who are tuning in for the very first time. You're lucky to the last show for the season.
But we're still happy that you're here. And I hope you've been enjoying all that the season has had to offer, meaning June plum. And you're eating your fruits and your vegetables, you're keeping hydrated. But it's also hurricane season, Anna.
Yeah, eat pear, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, hurricane seasons?
Yeah, you always have to go with food, right?
And of course, and as a June plum also.
Yes. So, of course, ensuring that you have all your relevant stocks and supplies just in the event of a hurricane.
Just in case. Yes, and remember, keep smiling. Smiling keeps you young. You know that?
As usual, we have an interesting show lined up for you today. We have Major Keron Burrell, Executive Director of the Financial Services Commission, and he will be our very special guest.
But before we start our conversation with Major Burrell, you know, we got to do this. We got to check in with the streets.
What is the role and function of Bank of Jamaica?
To produce money, to make the money, not make them, distribute money.
Deal with money thing, man. Monetary fund, man. Deal with money, man. Bank of Jamaica money thing, man. When you say Bank of Jamaica money, you go, what go on, when you go Bank of Jamaica money thing.
What is the role of it? To actually manage our money, basically.
It is the central bank.
The Bank of Jamaica is a regulatory bank that governs all the different banks in Jamaica. It also ensure that the other banks are in compliance with the rules that they issue, and they also ensure that the standards are being met to international standards. So that's the role. That's a part of the role of the Bank of Jamaica.
And that's the word from the streets. By the way, BOJ is responsible for monetary policy, supervising commercial banks and other licensed deposit-taking institutions, managing external reserves, and issuing and redeeming currency.
100% right. In addition, BOJ manages our payment, clearing, and settlement systems and the foreign exchange market, and is banker to the government and commercial banks. Whew. Welcome to Centrally Speaking.
Major
Burrell.
Hi, Major Burrell. Welcome to Centrally Speaking.
Thank you so very much. Happy to be here.
So, Major, you joined the FSC in February of this year. Congratulations on that. Can you tell us a little bit about the role, your role, some more about your role, and what you bring to the FSC?
Well, I'm a chartered accountant, and I would have started at the central bank years ago. And the central bank would have, I would say, transformed me from a chartered accountant to a regulator, and then to a supervisor. I was placed in the policy department, and I have held several positions in that role, and eventually I became its head. I became afterwards the first head of the policy and regulation division before becoming the chief prudential officer. Over that
That's at Bank of Jamaica.
At Bank of Jamaica.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Right. So over that period of time, I would have amassed a lot of knowledge, skills, and abilities in financial management, in the entire sector. And then afterwards, I would think I amassed knowledge as it concerns people skills, people management. Interestingly, I was also invited to become a mediator by the Singapore International Mediation Center. And I'm a part of the mediation group of specialists of the Caribbean. I think in addition to all those, I'm also in the Jamaica Defense Force. And that blend of knowledge, skills, and ability has really enabled me to go across to the FSC and bring that to the institution. And I think that means I'm best placed at this time to lead the institution.
Now that we're on the note of the FSC, what are the roles and responsibilities of the Financial Services Commission?
The FSC started in 2001, in August 2001, after the events of the crisis of the 90s.
Right.
At that time, our mandate, which still is, to supervise, regulate, and investigate certain institutions and individuals, to include insurance companies, life and general, securities, pensions, private pensions, and eventually, well, certainly in this year, the trust and corporate services providers.
Okay.
I think in addition to those, we also regulate individuals, those who are involved in pension administrators, trustees, investment advisors, and financial advisors, to name a few. The institution, I think, I would say, is the role of a gatekeeper.
Okay.
And in that role, we do several things as our mandate is wide-ranging. We ensure the safety and soundness of the financial institutions I just stated, and we ensure, of course, that we support financial stability. In addition, though, we also adhere to standards as it concerns poker and ensure that our institutions are adhering to those standards. We therefore do risk-based assessments as it concerns poker, but also prudential assessments. And in that way, we take a certain number of reports on an ongoing basis and ensure that these institutions are safe and sound, and importantly, are not being used as conduits for financial crime.
So in your response, you mentioned two terms, poker and prudential. What does prudential mean in the context of the FSC, and what does poker stands for?
I would say think of the word prudent,
Yes.
prudential.
Right.
So if you're prudent, you act in a manner that is safe
Yes.
and sound. So we take a lot of information from these institutions to ensure that their capital and liquidity are at levels that we consider safe. And I guess you'll ask me what is liquidity as well. Liquidity, and the reason why we take it seriously. Think about your salary.
Yeah.
At the end of the month,
Take it seriously.
how do you
Yeah.
feel in terms of cash?
Eh,
You have a lot of cash, but at the end of the month, before payday, you would not have a lot of cash. Now, you need to manage, however, your cash throughout the month to ensure that you can pay your expenses. It's the same for an insurance company, a securities dealer. So we take the issue of that very seriously. As it concerns, I think you asked for safe and soundness?
No, and
Poker.
ask what poker stands for.
What does poker stand for?
Proceeds of Crime Act.
Right. Which institutions? You mentioned the categories, but I mean, do you want to drill down into the types of institutions? Which institutions does the FSC supervise?
Well, I'll tell you the institutions and I'll also tell you the individuals.
Okay.
So you have insurance, which is life and general, securities dealers, you have private pensions, and you also have recently trust and corporate services providers.
Okay.
In terms of individuals, you have financial advisors, investment advisors, pension administrators, and trustees.
Okay.
So I take it that these persons have a license. So now you'll tell me how the commission is structured to support the mandate of supervising those individuals and institutions.
Well, at the helm of our institution stands our board of commissioners.
Right.
Now, they're really responsible for the strategic vision of the institution and also the day-to-day management of the institution. However, because they're a board, they delegate that to me, the ED, and I am supported by my management team.
Right.
And this includes senior directors, managers, analysts, and senior analysts, and they ensure that the commission is run effectively on a day-to-day basis. In order to do all we do, we first need to bring the institutions and individuals under our supervisory ambit.
Yeah.
How do we do that? First and foremost, therefore, we have to license them. So by licensing institutions, we bring them under our ambit. And as it concerns individuals, it's the same process or a similar process.
Okay.
To make them registrants, we bring them under, and that is how we are now able to supervise them. After doing that, we engage in what we call supervision. So I'll explain. So the first phase is regulation, where we license them.
Yeah.
And this is where we introduce them to these broad rules that define acceptable behavior. What is accepted? The first thing that you need to be a licensee or a registrant. Secondly, having become a licensee or registrant, we then engage the supervision process where we examine you. Now, the most recent methodology is what we call the risk-based methodology, and that is how we effectively supervise and examine. So first thing, we need to know what are the significant activities of the institution, right?
Okay.
What do they do?
Right.
Secondly, what are the risks involved? And by doing that, we get a knowledge of business of what the institution is doing or the registrant is doing. Then we look at what do they do to mitigate those risks. When I mean that, I mean to lessen the risk associated
Yes.
with what they're doing.
Right.
And we look at their broad governance framework, meaning what do they do as a risk tool to reduce those risks. So For example, we expect them to have a manager, we expect them to have a board of directors,
Okay.
and that is giving them proper oversight
Right.
of the function. At the end, we look at various things as well. What is it that is their residual risk, right?
Yeah.
And then we look what is their capital and liquidity. And I explained it before. Capital is like, the lack of capital is like a cancer, sorry. And if you have sufficient, then you're healthy. The lack of liquidity is like a heart attack. And if you have sufficient, you're okay. And we have to look at as well using the institutions for financial crime. So we have to look at the same principles, but we look at threats and vulnerabilities. The vulnerability is the open door. The threat is a thief outside.
Okay.
I like that.
And I don't leave the door open because the threat are going to come in.
Vulnerable.
Yeah, you're very vulnerable.
So we want to ensure for institutions that there are no open doors, right? To ensure that they have policies and procedures. And therefore also on the threat side, we try to ensure that through their various mechanisms, those threats are reduced. So the customer who wants to use them as a financial crime conduit then is reduced. When we look at all these factors now, we also look at the various reports we get from them, prudential and otherwise. Prudential means the reports we want on an ongoing basis, so that it's daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly. There are other reports as well that concerns audit reports. That's not from us, but we want to see what the auditors are saying. We look at all these various information and then we go into our toolkit and say, okay, what is it that they're doing? Are they breaching any objectives, any rules, any guidelines? If they are, we take measures, whether it's cancellation, suspension, or otherwise.
Okay.
So I think broadly, that is how we regulate and supervise, and that is our role.
Centrally speaking, we'll be right back.
Introducing the new $2,000 note. The new $2,000 note was created to help bridge the gap between the $1,000 and $5,000 notes. With the introduction of the $2,000 note alongside the $1,000 and $5,000 notes, fewer notes will be required to settle transactions. For example, instead of using 4 $1,000 notes to settle a transaction of $4,000, an individual could use just 2 notes, a combination of 2 of the new $2,000 notes. This substitution effect will lead to less reliance on the heavily demanded $1,000 bill, as well as generate cost savings for the bank over time.
Welcome back to Centrally Speaking. We are speaking with Major Keron Burrell, Executive Director of the Financial Services Commission. So, Major, is securities and insurance, consumer protection, a part of your mandate?
Indeed it is. So Section 6 of the Financial Services Act would outline a broad mandate for the Commission. As part of that mandate, we have market conduct and consumer protection. And we ensure that our entities put in place a process, a methodology to ensure that consumer complaints and market conduct is dealt with in line with our requirements and expectations and in line with international best practice standards. We ourselves also have a public campaign to ensure that the public understands this and also understands the operations of our entities.
Okay, so if Donovan, for example, has an issue with his financial institution, he can file a complaint with the FSC?
Yes, he can. We have a process at FSC to concern that. Now, what he would do, he has 2 choices. He can do it in soft copy or hard copy. Soft copy would mean he can email it in at complaints@fscjamaica.org. Hard copy means he can carry his hard copy forms to the FSC offices, and if he doesn't have the forms, we would give him the forms there and he would complete it. Having completed the forms, we would within 5 days contact him and ensure that his complaints are being dealt with. We would then assign it to an investigator, and at that point the investigator and Donovan would have some dialogue, and over a period of time, they would complete that case together. We would say within 90 days. So we want it to be completed. Our SLA is in 90 days, and at the end, we would send him a correspondence which outlines the findings of the investigations.
So, as executive director of FSC, would you say that your investment houses and insurance companies are actually functioning in our best interest?
Yes, I would say so. And I would go back to our broad mandate as well. We have a broad mandate which ensures that we have objectives, and these objectives are indicated to the houses. And these houses must put in place their requirements and measures to ensure that this happens. To include, we want them to put measures in place to ensure that there is fair dealing. We want to put measures in place to ensure that there's a reduction or a management of conflicts of interest, and to ensure that the product and advice are fit for purpose.
Okay.
All right, so we know that when it comes to investing especially, it involves risk. Yeah? So how does the FSC ensure that the entities that it regulates are managing themselves according to international best practice?
Well, again, it's our two-pronged process, right? Regulation and supervision. So we indicate to the entities the broad rules that define acceptable behavior, and we impress upon them these broad rules, and we ensure that through our various acts that they're adhered to. Then there's a supervisory process where we go in both off-site and on-site to ensure that they're doing what we say they're supposed to be doing, and also we ensure that they are examined on an ongoing basis. And I would have explained that examination is a risk-based approach. So importantly, we divert our resources to the areas of greatest risk, and that's the same thing we expect of institutions.
So just quickly before you go, Major, your response just now forced me back to the original question of the international best practice. So can you tell us quickly, or for our viewers especially, what are some of those best practices? And I imagine that you partner with international agencies and bodies to ensure that we are best practice compliant.
As it concerns the IMF in particular, we are assessed on a periodic basis. We are also signatories or signees to several organizations. As it concerns pensions, the International Organization of Pension Supervisors. As it concerns insurance, the International Association of Insurance Supervisors, IAIS. As it concerns securities, IOSCO, the International Organization of Securities Commissions.
What are some of the things that we should look out for when we're looking for somewhere to invest our funds?
Your investment is your personal priority, and you need to safeguard your interests. And I think that's very important. From that mindset and embracing that concept, I must say that you must first ensure that investments you're going into are fit for your purpose, right? There's some other points. Firstly, ensure that the investment house is licensed by the FSC. That's the first thing. Or anyone you're going to ensure that they're licensed and regulated by us. Secondly, the person, the investment manager, you're going to ensure that they are registered with the FSC as well.
So we must just ask them?
Well, you can ask them, and that's one. You can also go on the website, that's two. And three, you can also call us, email us, and we'll confirm. And that's very important. The next thing, look at the fees that they're giving you. Look at the fees that they are offering. Compare the fees with others. And that will give you a good idea as to whether the fees are exorbitant or not. Thirdly, look at the risk and rewards. Many persons only look at the rewards, the returns. Look at the risk.
Guilty.
And then
Yeah.
ask the individual, ask the company, ask the investment manager, what are the risks? How can we work together to ameliorate these risks? And that's very important. Lastly, and I think very importantly, you must check up on your statements, check up on your balances, and ensure that these are coming from the company and not just from an arbitrary, not just from an individual in the entity. So you must get it directly from the entity and not from a particular manager or relationship manager. So you need to take your interests into your own hands and protect it.
Thank you so much, Major Keron Burrell, Executive Director of the FSC. He spoke to us today on Centrally Speaking, helping us to understand some more about the Financial Services Commission.
Jamaica's currency has a fresh new look. Introducing the new $50 note. The new $100 note. The new $500 note. The new $1,000 note. The new $2,000 note. The new $5,000 note. Jamaica's new banknotes, modern, more secure, and made to last.
On today's show, we focused on the work of the Financial Services Commission. Now let's review the discussion and get into the fast facts. Number 1. The Financial Services Commission is a self-financing statutory body that regulates, supervises, investigates, and sanctions entities operating within the non-deposit-taking financial sector, which includes insurance, private pensions, securities, trusts, and corporate services. Number 2. The role of the Board of Commissioners is to provide oversight to the strategic vision and operations of the Financial Services Commission, supported by the Executive Director. Number 3. The FSC, as a gatekeeper, supervises institutions and utilizes a risk-based methodology to assess threats faced by licensees, mitigate risks, and detect breaches and deficiencies in the operations of its licensees and registrants. Number 4. The FSC is a signatory to several international bodies, such as the International Organization of Pension Supervisors, that's IOPS, the International Association of Insurance Supervisors, that's IAIS, and International Organization of Securities Commissions, IOSCO. The IMF assesses the effectiveness of the supervisor and the compliance of the sector with these international standards. And number 5, where a member of the public should have an issue with an entity or an individual that operates within the non-deposit taking sector, he or she may lodge a complaint with the FSC, and thereafter the Commission will take the necessary steps to investigate and provide closure on the matter. And that's it for our Fast Facts. So, that's it for our program this week and for Season 5.
Can you imagine? Season 5 has come to a close already, but we can't leave just yet. We have to say a few thank yous, like thanks to the staff and the team at Bank of Jamaica that keeps Centrally speaking.
And of course, thank you for the viewers who tune in every week, and even if it's your first time, thank you ever so much.
All right, big up the production crew. You know yourselves, guys. Thanks so much for being here with us every single week.
And tolerating us, especially Anna, every single week.
Viewers, friends, well-wishers, for those who see us on the street, I watch a program, it's so informative. Yeah, thanks for that too.
So please keep connecting with us online, and of course, follow us on Twitter and Facebook at Central Bank JA and on Instagram at Central Bank Jamaica. You can also visit our website at www.boj.org.jm.
And of course, what Centrally Speaking next year?
Yes, on your favorite station when we will have other interesting guests.
I'm Anna.
And I'm Sheena. Thanks for watching. Centrally Speaking is a production of Bank of Jamaica.